and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Tonya, and today we're going to be chatting about the books that I read during the month in April. There's going to be some audiobooks, some ebooks, and some physical books. And I will say it was kind of a mixed bag. I had some books that I absolutely loved, and I had some books that I did not love as much. So grab yourself a tasty beverage, have a seat, and let's chat about books. So even though it was kind of a mixed bag in how much I either liked or didn't like some of the books that I read this month, I did actually make it through a ton of books. I listened to 3 different audiobooks, 2 ebooks, and then 4 physical books. So we'll go ahead and start with the physical books. The first being 5 Broken Blades by Maya Corland. And I will say, for me, this was a 5-star read. I absolutely loved it. It was one of the best books that I've read in a long time. And part of that was just the flow of the book. So the book starts off where it's broken up into 5 different characters' point of views, who basically their mission is that they are going to try to kill the God King. And they're from all different walks of life. Their reasons for trying to kill the king are all different. But in the end, they end up coming together to try to accomplish this task. And you have a thief, you have an exiled prince, a poisoned geisha, you have a strong man, and you have a spy master. So very varied backgrounds, and as I said, all have different reasons for wanting to kill this king, other than the fact that, you know, he's just not a good person. But the battle scenes in this, they were described so well, and just the banter back and forth in between the characters and their relations together, it was amazing. Now this isn't a book where you're gonna have tons of magic or tons of mythical creatures. That really wasn't the main point of the book, even though it does have some fantasy elements in it. The main point of the book was just the relationships that got built between the different characters along the way on their journey to try to kill this king. And I loved it. I can't wait to read the next one and would highly recommend this book. I also read Enchantra this month, which is the second book in the Wicked Games series by Kaylee Smith. The first book was Phantasma, and I will say, even though these are kind of interconnected standalones, I would suggest that you read Phantasma first. That is not what I did. This was the first one I read, but by reading this, there are some things from the first book that get revealed in this book. Not something where I think it's going to be a spoiler for, you know, don't read the first book, it's not going to be enjoyable, but you do learn some things that, you know, it might have been nice not to know. But if you do read them out of order, I don't think it'll be that big of a deal. But if you can, I would suggest reading Phantasma first. And basically in this book, we're following Genevieve, who was also in the first book. And she is entering into a house of a friend of her mother's who has passed away. And upon arriving at this house, she meets the owner's son, Rowan, who immediately shuts the door in her face. So all things said, she'd come a long way to try to find out some things about her mother that she really wanted to know, and she wasn't going to take no for an answer as far as getting into this house and meeting with the friend of her mother's. And all things happening, she ends up in a deadly game of basically hide and seek with some other twists and turns along the way, along with Rowan, as they try to survive and win this game that they're in. Now, I would say overall, it's a good book. I rated it a 3.75. It keeps your interest more so at the beginning and at the end of the book. The middle, some of that got pretty repetitive, and I feel like some of it could have been cut out. The romance, it was pretty good. It wasn't anything outstanding until you got closer to the end of the book. I think things did kind of start picking up and becoming more real at that point. But at the beginning, you know, it was more lust than love. And, you know, sometimes that's fun, sometimes it's not. But in the end, pretty good book. I was at, like I said, a 3.75, so would recommend, but read Phantasma first. And then next I read A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. This was one I really enjoyed as well. I gave it 4.5 stars. The sequel will be coming out, I believe, in July. It is called A Study in Dreaming, and I definitely plan to pick that one up as well. Not only because it's a good read, but the books are absolutely gorgeous. I do love me a gorgeous book. But in this book, we're following Effie and Preston. And Effie, it basically wins a contest to go to her favorite author's home after he has passed and help design a new home for his son and his widow. And while she is there, she meets Preston, who has come to learn more about this author, that he's maybe not such a big fan of this particular author and thinks he was a bit of a fraud and is trying to prove that, you know, Effie's favorite author maybe wasn't all he was cracked up to be. So they start off kind of as rivals, but as the book goes on, they end up working together for, you know, various different reasons, and also finding out that, you know, love is in the air and a romance starts to bloom. So lots of different turns there along the way. What I will say about this book is the author's writing is beautiful. It is super descriptive. Just everything was really well detailed. The conversations flowed really well. But just in general, the descriptions of the house and different things were just really well done. And that was one of the main things I enjoyed about the book. The story was really well done too. Now there were things that I think could have been elaborated on a little more, like the setting itself when they're at the house of the author. That is super descriptive and well thought out. But as far as some things about some of the other cities and some of the other country settings, those weren't maybe detailed as much and could have maybe been built up a little more to add to the story. But overall, really good book. Would recommend. This is a YA romance, so it's not super steamy or really steamy at all, but it does have a good little romance element. But it's really a rather kind of unique story, and Effie really comes into her own in it, and thought it was a really good read. I also read Emily Wilde's A Compendium of Lost Tales by Heather Fawcett, and this is the third book in the Emily Wilde series, and it is the final book. And I really enjoyed this whole series. I would say the first book and the third book were my favorites out of the series. I will continue to say these books would make a super cute television series. Emily Wilde is a scholar and she looks at things through a scholarly eye. So, you know, can be somewhat detached from emotion, but I think over the course of the books we've seen her grow in that area where she is still, you know, looking at things through that scholar's lens, but emotions have started to creep into the picture as well. For this book, I didn't have any complaints about how the story was built. And some of the other books, I kind of felt like pieces were kind of glossed over and we didn't really get any explanation of certain things that happened. But I thought this one was very well rounded. It made me shed a tear at the end. If you read the book, I'm sure you will be able to figure out which part that is. But overall, this book just continued Emily and Wendell's story. I feel like the series as a whole was pretty original, and I greatly enjoyed it. If you like cozy fantasy, then you'll definitely want to check out this series. Like I said, it was great. I really enjoyed it, and I'm kind of sad that it's over. Now you may be saying, Tonya, I thought you said it was a mixed bag of books that you read this month. That's because it was, and now that we're finished with the physical books and moving on to the ebooks, that's where things took kind of a downward spiral, was on the ebooks this month. So the first ebook that I read was Iron and Embers by Helen Schurer, and this is part of the Thesmar world. She has another series called The Legends of Thesmar. Really great book series, and this was an offshoot of two of the characters that are in that series for their own duology. And the two characters that we're following are Ren and Torge. Ren is an alchemist turned assassin, and Torge is a war sword who is kind of a guardian of the realm. And in the Legends of Thesmar series, these two, we could see glimmerings of a budding romance, and then we're kind of picking up on their stories in this duology. And I have to say, I was kind of disappointed. You saw what could have been a great romantic relationship building, just little glimpses of it in the Legends of Thesmar series. But in this particular series, there has been, there was a great war that has happened, and Ren and Torge both are kind of dealing with the aftermath of that and all the different feelings that come along with that. And Ren's way of dealing with that is killing people who harmed her friends and her family during that war through poisoning. And Torge is still trying to uphold his place as a guardian of the realm. And, different things happen where they were once growing close, but now they look at each other as enemies. And I just really felt like, the kind of turning point or the event that made their relationship go sour didn't really make a lot of sense. It was it was just kind of out there, and I didn't think it had a lot of good context to it. And that kind of started off the book on a bad note for me. And I know they were going for kind of like an enemies to lovers kind of thing, but it was just like, it felt so hateful to me for people who already had a history together, and I just didn't like it. That's not what I was expecting from these two characters. I thought there'd be some good banter, some back and forth, some sarcasm, things like that, but it was just hateful, and it did not appeal to me. I haven't decided if I'm going to go ahead and continue with the duology or not. Especially based on the way that this book ended. Just overall, it was not my favorite. I still, I gave it I was at like a 3.5 star. So it definitely could have been worse. And parts of it were still enjoyable, but overall, just wasn't my favorite book from this author, and I'm not sure if I'm going to continue with this series yet or not. And then the next ebook, it didn't get any better for me this month. I read Spring's Descent by C.L. Breyer, and this was a Hades and a Persephone retelling. And so you know that it's going to be a little, kind of out there as far as the male dominance, because it is Hades, he's a Greek god. They have their godlike persona and how they lord it over mortals and all of that. So you go into it kind of expecting some arrogance and some possessiveness, but it gets to be a little over the top. Now, there is spice in this book. There's a decent amount of it. I don't mind spice. It was more the language that went along with this book that I did not care for. And I'm not talking about they say cock or things like that. That doesn't bother me. I'm not someone who that offends, or I think it's inappropriate or anything like that, Whatever words they want to use in that vein, I'm fine with. What I was not fine with is Hades talked about worshiping Persephone, which you would think it would all be good, but then in the same vein, there was a lot of talk of using her sexually, and I just was not. That's not my cup of tea. I don't think that's right. So that kind of ruined the book for me, which is kind of sad because I actually thought the author's writing was really good. She was great with conversation. The storytelling was well done. But I'm not gonna sit there and read about someone being fucking used for sex. It was just not for me. So I gave this one a 2-star based solely on that portion of the book. It was not something that was okay with me. I don't think it's a very good representation for women. Yeah, so I would not recommend this book. And that's really all I have to say about that one. And moving on to the audiobooks I listened to this month. This was more positive than the ebooks. It was still kind of a mix though. I listened to 3 different books this month. The first one was Quicksilver by Callie Hart. And I know like there's mixed opinions on this one, but I absolutely loved it. I like sarcasm. The banter in it was really great. I thought the world building and just the setting and the magic concept was really interesting. Now I know, and this is kind of a similar vein to what I was talking about with the Spring's Descent, that some people don't like this book because they feel like the language in it, as far as the sexual language, is too rough. I didn't really feel that I didn't get that feel in this book. To me, it was more of a sarcasm, I'm gonna one-up you kind of thing, but I never felt like it was hateful or demeaning, and that is what I could not stand from the Spring's Descent book. This, I don't know, I like a little sarcasm and a little bit of that bad boy in the relationship, so I really enjoyed this book. I thought it lived up to all the hype as far as those people who love the book, and I'm really looking forward to Brimstone when it comes out later this year. I also listened to Once Charmed, Twice Cursed by Shailene Gandhi, and I thought this one was a pretty good book as well. I gave it 3 3/4 stars, so 3.75 stars. I thought the storytelling was done really well. The author really has a way of describing emotions that I enjoyed, and the 2 main characters in the book, Brea and Weston, just had great banter, great chemistry. It is a brother's friend to lovers story with a little bit of an arranged marriage thrown in there to add to the plot. I wouldn't say this book had the most original of plots, but the story itself was actually really good. Brea, who is the main character, is born with the luck mark, so she is lucky in all things. Just whoever is around here gets good luck too. From little everyday things like not getting rained on to bigger things like, you know, her parents were really prosperous just from being around her. And then Weston, who is the love interest, has a null mark, which basically cancels out her good luck. And so she is at an age where it is time for her to marry. There's 100 eligible bachelors in the town they live in. 99 of them propose to her. The only one who doesn't is Weston, because he doesn't want to harm her because of this null mark he has. So as things progress throughout the story, Wendell and Brea do end up coming together, and you know, they're working through this idea of her having the luck mark and him having to stay away from her because he has the null mark and can completely cancel out her luck, and that's something he's never wanted to have happened. But they do end up sharing that they have feelings for each other, and things kind of progress from there. Like I said, the plot itself isn't the most original. You know, it's a romance. So romances typically have their happy ending, but the idea of the different, the luck and the null marks was pretty interesting. I would say what kind of brought the book down a level to me is for parts of the book, Brea was a little more meek than I would like. in a heroine. That was one of the points of the book. It was something she was, growing to come more into her own. But just for some portions of the story, she was a kind of on the meek side for me, which was somewhat irritating for certain parts of the story. So that for me is kind of what put it in that 3.5, 3.75 range instead of being more of a 4-star book. So I would recommend it. The narrator on the audiobook was great. Like I said, the author's descriptions and the banter throughout the book was great. I just wanted the main character to have a little more spine than she did. Then the final book I listened to this month was Spark of the Everflame by Penn Cole. I know this is a super popular one, but I'm just kind of getting around to starting the series. The audiobook was really good. I enjoyed the first book. So in Spark of the Everflame, the main female character is named Diem. She is a healer, and her mother ends up disappearing. Her mother was a healer as well and taught Diem her trade of healing. Her mother was also the palace healer for the Descendant, who are like the ruling body within this world. And the Descendant are basically descended from children of the gods. They have magic. They're kind of like fae. They have magic. They're stronger. They heal quicker. They're faster than mortals. So they're just kind of the dominant race, and have been maybe not the nicest to the mortals. Overall, I really like how strong of a female character that Diem comes off as in this book. I think the world structure is pretty interesting, and the magic system is also pretty interesting. It is a romantasy, so there is that aspect as well. I won't go into too much detail because this series is still continuing, and there is a book that just came out recently, and then I think another one is due out this year. So don't want to ruin the series for anyone, but overall for this one for me was a 4-star. Like I said, I really liked the world building that was done and the kind of conflict that was building in between the Descended and the mortals. So more is going to be coming from that. But overall, great series, gave it a 4-star, and can't wait to continue on to the next book. And that was everything that I read this month. Like I said, it was kind of a mixed bag. I had from a 5-star with 5 Broken Blades, which, as I said, I highly recommend, all the way down to the 2-star of Spring's Descent. Do not recommend at all. I think the language in it towards women and how they are treated sexually was quite horrible. So yeah, whole big mixed bag this month. So definitely some ups and downs on what I read this month, but overall I really enjoyed a lot of the books that I did read this month. I really only had the 2 duds, so for the most part, a pretty good month of reading, and I hope you enjoyed hanging out with me as I chatted about the books that I read this month. So definitely leave me a comment down below on the book you read this month that you loved the most and the book you read this month that you liked the least. It's always interesting to hear your thoughts on the books that you're reading, so definitely look forward to reading all your comments down below. Take care, keep reading, and I'll catch you in my next video. Bye!